In this episode of Behind the Attack, we've officially entered the final chapter of Playtest 22. What's new? The official rulebook is getting a facelift and when you may be able to get to play at home. The lands of Neptuna Prime are mutating with an update to the local map, and the Warlock class gets a taste of the Dark Spore's power. See what's new on the roadmap for the month of May. Welcome back to another edition of Behind the Attack, a behind-the-scenes look at the development of Attack of the Sporelings, a D&D 5th edition campaign setting where you play an evil alien ooze that crash lands on a strange new world. Your mission? Total domination. Possess the minds of this planet's hosts, feast on the flesh of their dead, and unlock powerful mutations along the way. Let's dive in. So, playtest 22. I have played the first 21 playtests were all one shots. The game was initially intended to be a one shot. I got to the point where that no longer made sense because D&D 5th edition just didn't kind of work for the game I was trying to develop. So I said I always knew I wanted to do a full session campaign. This was the first attempt. Playtest 22 was the very first attempt at that. I originally scheduled for like 5 sessions. It's going to be end up closer to, I think we're going to do it 9, but right, 10 roughly sessions to be able to kind of play this game. And yeah, we're 6 sessions in, and it's been an incredible experience because the rules fundamentally change when you go from a one shot to a full session campaign. There are some things that became a lot more prevalent, some things that didn't matter as much. So making those changes just as we go through has been really helpful. And I think that creating a feedback loop with the players has helped do that. So I have as part of this playtest, right? Like we were playing in Discord, so I said, all right, let me set up some channels, so then that way I can kind of facilitate some of this feedback loop. So let me share my screen. So 2 channels I created. Session notes. This has been super helpful just to kind of like keep communications going with players. Helpful for me as the DM to go back and just kind of track my notes. But then also as the game designer to kind of take those and distill those and take my session notes and combine it with the player notes to be able to kind of turn the set. I'm fundamentally starting with session notes and then developing them into campaign rules. Adding those rules to the rule book. So having an additional piece there that is pulling from the players has been incredibly helpful to be able to kind of work towards massaging the game into a full campaign from the last iteration of it being a one shot. So it's been a lot of fun. Gotten a lot of feedback from the players and continue to kind of move in the direction of just getting this game ready. We've got 3 sessions left. The first one is tonight. I'm very excited for it. We should wrap up in 3 sessions. I don't see why we wouldn't be able to. But I think I'm going to take a week or 2 off, and I'm already immediately starting to plan out. All right, here's the next playtest 23. I'm going to plan in advance for 10 sessions. I felt it. If you're a DM, you know that the deal, or even players too. Scheduling is the hardest part about all of this. So I'm doing all the scheduling up front. I'm just even before I start recruiting, I'm just saying like here are the 10 sessions I'm running. I'll probably likely run three sessions in a row, take a week off, 3 sessions in a row, take a week off, and then 4 sessions to close out the full campaign. I think that's the best way to kind of run it and test it. And I'll just say, like and then I'll start recruiting and finding players who are available to play during those times at that point in time. So another part of the feedback loop was to be able to kind of like really hold myself accountable to making sure that the rules were, I couldn't just keep changing the rules and adding in notes that didn't make sense and stuff like that, right? Like the rule book kind of got to a point where it was a mess, where it was a culmination of old rules, new rules, and ideas, right? So they were kind of all over the place. So I started to use the change log to kind of hold myself accountable, and then to also make sure that I was sharing the updates with players, so that way we knew going into the session, right? So like I might sit down and I might update the rule book, and then I would kind of come here and say, all right, like here are the updates to this particular ability or this mutation or whatever it is. Just be able to share those with the players between sessions so they can kind of see what's going on behind the scenes. I've gotten some pretty positive feedback from players just kind of being able to participate in that part of the process. But really, kind of when we show up to the game night, like tonight, we'll kind of hop in and we'll say, all right, like basically what's changed to the rules. When was the last update? Okay, cool. Here are all the things that are new that we're actually going to implement and be playing tonight. So then that way it's all right, it's set up clear from before we even start playing that here are the changes to the rules. If they come up, we need to address them. And then it gives me feedback on those particular rules. So it allows me to iterate a lot faster, which has been really awesome. So speaking of updates to the rulebook, like I said, was kind of one big mess in the beginning. And I kind of always knew there's two parts, right? I mean, if you look at kind of like fifth edition core rulebooks, there's three. There's the player's guide and the DM's handbook. So I kind of knew that I needed to separate those things out. And then it wasn't until last weekend that I finally did that. And I now have the Sporeling's Guide to the Universe, which is effectively the kind of like core rulebook, the main mechanics to play this game. It is essentially a D&D light where you're kind of bolting onto the existing rule set. So there are already massive textbooks that have all the rules for D&D. I don't need to iterate all these things. It's just here are and I mean, this is really only 10 pages in a Word document right now. And I don't think it's going to end up being much more, which when I had the vision for this, publishing this book, I wanted to create a textbook. Um, and I realized that the core mechanics, the core rules of the game for anyone to just come in and be able to play. Yes, I'm still going to be publishing big books that are campaign settings. Here's the planet that you can crash land into, and here are all the experiences that come along with it. But I wanted to be able to have a core rule book that I could right? Just have a PDF online that people could download. I want to, and then now it kind of formalizes a vision. All right, well, like maybe this is just like a small little like zine that I can publish, and it's right. It's cost effective. It's easy for me to distribute, easy for me to get into the hands of players. Gives them an ability to kind of play and experience the game in their own campaign settings or adapt existing campaign settings without investing in kind of like the full right. Like I don't need to spend $60 just to play this game. I can either download it for free online, or I can buy kind of like for a lot cheaper, the little, the pamphlet that comes with it. So that was kind of like how it's starting to shape up is by splitting these two, right? So here's the Sporling's Guide to the Universe. So this is the core mechanics of the rule book. And then this is the specific, right? So I've been developing in tandem the core mechanics of this game as well as like your crash landing onto Neptuna Prime. So Neptuna Prime is really the campaign setting. So this is kind of like the DM's guide, right? I call it the DM Playbook for Neptuna Prime. As I develop more and more planets, I'll have a book for each of these. It breaks it down by like what are the regions, what are the zones, what are the factions that are in there, and kind of what do you encounter along the way. Now, in its current form, this is very much just kind of like a mix of my tables and my session notes and things like that. But the simple act of splitting these two out into two separate books has really kind of like opened my mind up to how I can continue developing and publishing and iterating on this game. Because now that I've split these out and I've made this and I've changed my mind to like I'm just going to make the core mechanics free. Like I just want to give it to everyone and get open feedback. Um, I can now very quickly kind of like make this portion, these core mechanics, these rule books playable. So I can get a beta out. So then that way I can publish it on the website and you can come and download it and play it with your friends and add it to your existing campaign setting. Um, and then I can set up a feedback loop from, because my feedback loop is small. It's 6 players playing with me maybe once a week. So it's very hard to kind of progress the game forward with limited feedback. So by opening it up to letting other DMs and players experience this at their own tables, right? Like I'm one of the only ones who's DM'd this game before. So right, it's all through like my personal preference as a DM. Right. So I want to see like how this game is experienced through other people's tables, essentially. So by making the rules public, getting them out there as fast as I can, setting up a program where anyone who wants to be a playtester can playtest it, and I'll set up forms so then that way I can collect feedback and data and accumulate all the information, so that way I can kind of make those adjustments based on again a larger kind of feedback loop. And then I want to start to look at like how do I share that with all of you, right? So for those of you who do want to participate, who do want to play, who do want to provide feedback, um, same kind of like system that I implemented into Discord, right? Like, how can you come into the Etherealm Studios Discord? How can you participate? How can you submit your feedback? How can you see like how that feedback is being implemented into the game? What the current iteration of the game is as a result of kind of the advancement of the rules and things like that. So I'm very excited to kind of like move into this next phase where development seems to be speeding up as I kind of start to make these changes, which is really fun and exciting. So, that's kind of the core mechanics, updates to the rule books. Next up is the local map. So the local map has been it's changed a number of times, right? So it was originally, because this was a one shot and it was kind of based on rounds, the idea was to kind of like have it be a much smaller map and you can kind of only go in so many directions. And I was doing all this work to try and say like, all right, well, you know, if like level one and then level two, level three, like um how do you scale that leveling as you kind of go through? So, right, there's a lot of complications to the one shot. Once I opened it up to doing a full campaign, I obviously had to kind of reposition and change everything up. So I was like, oh crap, my map no longer makes sense. So when I started playtest 22, um, I wanted to make sure I just basically kind of drew this super quick. I needed something to put in front of my players to give them an idea of like, you crash here, you take over the mind of the first thing that you see, and here is its perception of the world around it. Where would you guys like to go? And have let them kind of like free roam the map to kind of, you know, their heart's desires. And as they encounter more people and more factions and hear more rumors and learn more information and find out what they know about you know, what intelligence they know about the invasion and kind of like what are the planet's hosts perspective of them arriving on their planet and taking over. Um, I've gotten to right like this map has served us well for this playtest, but there's a lot of missing pieces, and there's a lot of things that I've wanted to add to it as a result of playing through it. New locations that have come up that I want to add that I need to find maps for and things like that. So I had right, this was kind of like version one of the full campaign map. Then what I wanted to do was, you know, this is good for playtest, but as I look at playtest 22, but as I look for playtest 23, we start to ramp up for that. I wanted to make sure that I overhauled this map so that way we had like a better, fresh experience starting the campaign right with a new map. So I've started to kind of like add some new maps in, and then I also wanted kind of like generic maps. So there's a lot of woods, it's a mountainous area, like right, there's a lot more chances for random encounters in here. So filling in some of the existing tables that I've already created from the past iteration of the game. Right, so I kind of just like built this really quick to kind of move stuff around and figure out where did I want the kind of like main things, right? Like I wanted the town and the base and the wizard's tower kind of far away from the crash site, so you had to make your way up there, but then enough things to kind of like interest you and pull you in different directions depending on how the campaign is going. So this was a good stepping stone for me to kind of like lay out the map. Um, I had this idea of doing rounds, and I think that has kind of perpetrated from the initial one-shot design, and I needed rounds to kind of like get through the combat. And then I also there's this mechanic within the game that is it's the intelligence. It's the how much information do the hosts on the planet have, right? Like you crash, they see a fireball coming out of the sky, and then they go and say, "Well, what the hell's that? Let's go check it out." And then all of a sudden, these little black oozes coming out, and they start attacking you and attaching to your face. And then all of a sudden, people start going mad and crazy, and then start killing their friends and eating the flesh of their dead. And then right, like, it quickly evolves into this whole shit panic apocalyptic scenario. So the hosts of the planet and and the factions that they're from only have limited intelligence. So the more people that you let escape, the longer the time passes, the more information that they know, and the more likely they are to kind of come after you or to run from you. Or every faction, every kind of NPC is going to act differently to this invasion that is happening to them personally in the world that they live in. So I was looking at doing rounds, which is why I stuck to the hex model. But then now I'm kind of, as I look towards making this more of a campaign that you can just bolt on to existing campaign settings and things like that. Immediate thoughts came, well, what if you don't want to use a hex map, or uh, what if you want to do your own things, right? There was a lot of questions that came up like that. So I don't know if I will end up using a hex map in the end, but I'm already far enough down this point where I'm just going to keep doing it. So this was the baseline, and then from there, I've started to actually draw it out. It is still obviously in the very early phases of that, But it looks a lot better, I think, or will start to come together than the current hand-drawn version that I have. At least I have my hexes on the map. I know where my main locations are going to go, and kind of where the fields and where the woods and where the mountains are for the most part. So it's been exciting to pull this together and bring it together, and it's nice kind of like downtime things where I can sit down and I can just draw and map it out, sketch it, and continually add to it. But I've found more importantly than everything else, it's really helping me kind of immerse myself in the world and experience, like, well, where do I want to travel to? What would theoretically be close? Like, how do these roads work? Where do the rivers flow? Where would factions live on these maps, and how do they interact with one another? So just going through that alone has been an extremely helpful exercise for me. Next up is the Warlock Patron. So I mentioned this in last month's Behind the Attack, but I came up with an idea for a promotional campaign. So Attack of the Sporelings, you play a Sporeling. You then take over the minds of other hosts. You unlock mutations. You unlock, you find equipment and items and magic loot and stuff like that, like a typical campaign setting. The thing is, you don't have a character. You don't have a typical standard fifth edition character. You have a stat block, and then you acquire a new stat block, and you add mutations to it. You switch stat blocks. It's a lot of like stat block rotation and ability stacking and items and things like that. So it's not like it's not a traditional 5e campaign in that sense. So I never had the need to kind of create classes or to create, race. Like I didn't have to go in and build like the race in a traditional 5e fashion, or I didn't have to go build the subclasses that kind of match like wizard, cleric, sorcerer, things like that. However, as I was kind of like going through the building of this campaign, I was like, oh, it would be super fun, like if I go to build it as a promotional tool. Like, hey, if you know maybe you're not a DM and you can't play this or game, or you can't play this game, or you can't find DM who's going to run it for you, but you want to get a sense of like what it's like to play as a Sporeling. So I decided, I came up with the whole idea. I was going to come up with all these different basically subclasses for existing D&D fifth edition characters. Came up with a bunch of them, and I just started on one. I love warlocks, so I picked a warlock as the first one. So the warlock patron of the dark spore. And this is the very first draft, so it is very limited in, kind of like optimization and testing. I have played it once at a level 5 character, so I've really only kind of like tested the necrotic blade feature. So this one is a combination of the mutation classes of like necrotic arm, turning it into a blade, obviously with necrotic blade being kind of the first level ability, but also the psychic ability class. So being focused on kind of like being able to kind of torment people's minds and speak into their head and things like that. So in actually like building this and testing it, what was really cool is I came up with some kind of unique ideas that then fed back in and helped me kind of update the existing mutations, which was very interesting, right? So I created this purely as like here's a fun thing to go do. Here, go play this character in your own campaign. It's a good marketing tool to help get the game out there. But then what I didn't even anticipate was that it was going to help me iterate on and improve the mutations within the core game, which is really awesome. So I definitely want to do more of these because I think that will help me create more and more mutations and expand on the existing skill trees that live within the Sporeling mutation classes. Right, so the Warlock patron, Dark Spore, is essentially you get the mutated blade arm, and then it kind of upgrades as you go. Once you get to level 6, you can start to spread the infection that comes from the Dark Spore, all the knotty, like oozy roots that come out of it. There's a couple like entangle. Uh, where is it? Entangle, ensnaring strike, and spike growth, right? So you get to kind of like use those abilities inherently, and you are immune to the effects of the spell. So it really kind of puts you in the fight of the combat. You're really kind of like focused on controlling the front line, by like having these, right? You're swinging, you're attacking them. You are then now deploying kind of like area control and doing more damage and things like this. So. Mutagens is level 10, and I'm already like looking at this. I've never designed a subclass before, but like I can kind of look at this sheet and be like, this kind of seems like more than you would get from any other subclass. I don't necessarily know that it's overpowered, but it's too much, right? So I'm like, all right, how do I peel back on this? So I'm looking at some ways, especially around level 10, to kind of draw back on some of the options or the abilities that you have availability to. And then capstone for the class, Apex Predator, starting at 16th level, you become a Master of Death. You may make an attack using your bonus action, so it just makes you more versatile, allows you to make more attacks on your turn, as well as heal for an amount equal to the damage done by your Spread the Infection spells. So now you're also making those more powerful. You do damage, you do area control, and it also makes you tankier because you're healing in the process. So again, I've only tested this. I made a human warlock by the name of Miel. He's super creepy, really fun to play. I've only played him in a campaign once at level 5. I'm in the next couple weeks. I want to play him again. I'll level him up to level 6, so I'll get to actually test the next level in this subclass and start to get some feedback on and continue to do that. But this is something that I want to release, make available on the website so that way you can come and play. So again, this is something I'll hopefully have within the next month or so. Yeah, so that way you can bring to your own table and play in your own campaigns. You can play the creepy dark spore warlock patron. Cool. Those are most of the updates for this month. For the month of May. I'm sorry, for April. So coming into May, right? Like what's the plan? What are the priorities? So I always like to look at like what are the top 3 priorities. So I think with the final 3 sessions of Playtest 22, we are on 3 more sessions. Basically, I have them scheduled for the next 3 weeks. So this month we are going to be done officially with Playtest 22. I ultimately want to give myself 2 weeks off and then go into planning the next one. So I already have a loose idea of what that looks like. Schedule those 10 sessions, pick those dates, make sure that I am available for them. I'm not traveling or doing anything that would get in the way of it. And then just start recruiting people. I've got a bunch of players who have played in the one shot before, players who have played with me in other campaign settings. So just to see who's available for those dates and wants to play and get in on the next playtest. It should be wildly different than the next one based on some of the iterations. So as part of that, it's just staying on top of the core rulebook, making sure that I'm adding more of my session notes in, adding more stuff from all my old tables, updating it so that way it's less kind of chicken scratchy and session notes to more like official rules. The number 2 priority for May is getting the core rulebook ready to publish. So getting that live, putting it up on the website, doing all of the marketing integrations, right? So like making sure you can download, you can get access to it. I can send it to you. I can then kind of like follow up with people and get feedback on it, use that as an additional feedback loop, all that kind of fun stuff back end. And then public play testing, right? So I mentioned this before. I want to get it in your hands. I want to make sure that there is a way that you can sign up as an official tester so that way you can kind of like be notified of the changes, what's going on. I can create a form for you that you can fill out as many times as you'd like. I want to make sure, right, I'm kind of like getting ahead of myself now, but I want to make sure that you have access to those changes, what's going on, how your questions and your feedback are improving the game and what implementations you can see as a result of that. And then the third priority for May is to expand on the DM Playbook of Neptuna Prime. So again, right, I have the two books now. So the core rule books, how to play, how to play and how to DM a Attack of the Sporelings game. And then the DM Playbook for Neptuna Prime is the campaign setting of, okay, well, you specifically crash land into this planet Neptuna Prime. Here is the world map and the factions and the encounters and the loot and everything that goes into that specific world. So continuing to expand on that. Again, I'm pulling into encounters from the original tables from the original game, updating existing encounters that are just in the session notes. The factions, that stuff's all lives in my head. I do not have that documented anywhere. So getting that out and making that rule specific will be super helpful. And then just keep developing the local map because again, that's been helpful for, I think, players, for me to kind of really kind of immerse myself in this world. So it's been super fun and super exciting. I'm really excited to kind of get through as much of this stuff as I can. And I'll be back next month with another update. So thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you then.